Welcome back to the Free Code Camp podcast. I'm Quincy Larson, teacher and founder of freeCodeCamp.org. Today, we're talking with Dilip Krishnamoorthi. He's a software engineer working at Sony, building user interfaces for PlayStation game consoles, where he's been for the past 10 years. Dilip, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Quincy. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we're thrilled to have you here. I had a blast hanging out with you at the San Francisco State University Hackathon, where you and I were both judges. So if anybody's wondering how I met Dilip, that's where.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun too. It was very cool to see so many amazing projects, and I was actually humbled to see all these kids building super cool projects that had various levels of complexity, solving real world problems. Very impressed. Yeah,
super impressive. Well, today we're going to talk about how you dropped out of a traditional Indian university and used an inexpensive distance learning program to finish your engineering degree for less than $100 a semester. What it's like working in Bengaluru, the Silicon Valley of Asia. Your experience launching PlayStation 5 during the pandemic and all your work on the PlayStation 5, and tips for continuing to learn new skills even as a senior engineer. So, I want to ask, just start off. Right off the bat, everybody's concerned about AI. Everybody's interested in how AI is being used. You work for a massive company, more than 100,000 people, and you're an L5, level 5, the second highest engineering level at Sony. And at that level, are you even using AI developer tools? And if so, how are you using them?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm using AI. Everybody's eyes on it right now. But I personally have a more optimistic view about it. I'm not as pessimistic as people are saying that it's going to take over software engineering jobs. Personally, I use it for two reasons. One is improving my productivity. So I'm using it to code, but I don't wipe code. I like to review the code that I write. If AI is writing all the code, I don't think that's good, because you want to be able to know what the code is, and then when you work at a big company, all your code is reviewed by other people. If you're not writing it, it's not fair for the people who are reviewing it. So even if I'm using any AI generated code, I make sure that I understand what it's doing, and then only then use it. The only time I might wipe code is when I'm working on domains that are outside of my expertise, or if I want to build some nifty scripts to improve my productivity, or create some application or tool that could help improve my productivity. That's the only time I might wipe code but for my regular job, I don't wipe code. And then the other use case that I use it for is learning. It's a fantastic tool for that. So if you're stuck on something, or if you're learning a new programming language, or you're watching a free code camp tutorial or video, and it's great, and then you have a question and you're not sure what the teacher is talking about, and that's a great use case to use AI to help answer that question.
Kind of like Google search on steroids, in the sense that you can just put so much additional context. If you were to put a giant 2-paragraph prompt into Google, who knows what you would get.
Exactly.
But if you put that into an LLM, it can probably say, oh, okay, I see, kind of making connections and drawing from different knowledge that is represented in its training set, and okay, so for example, if I'm I use it all the time when I'm learning foreign languages. So I'll hear an expression, and with Chinese, it's really hard if you don't know the characters. That are represent. If you hear somebody speak it, you don't actually have the characters to reference, and that's how Chinese vocabulary works. So I'll be if I were to try to Google just a bunch of pinyin, which is the romanization scheme for Chinese, right, I might get lucky and find but it has to basically be an exact hit. But an LLM is smart enough to infer, okay, what was the context that you heard this in? Okay, well then it's probably actually this expression. Right. And it's one of those things that if you read it in a book, it's no big deal. Or maybe it is a big deal because you don't know how the characters are pronounced, so you copy paste them into the LLM. You could do that with Google though, but with the LLM, it just gives you additional, I guess, you can have extreme corner cases. There's the expression that I think 15 or 20% of all Google searches are things that have never been searched before in all of history. So there's like this really big long tail. But with like an LLM, like probably like 90+% of queries are things that have never been asked to the LLM before.
Right.
So it just gives you a lot more. It's just like a much more reliable way to get.
Yeah. And you can
deep
ask
cut
it.
knowledge.
Yeah, you can ask it a question the way you're thinking about it. So you're like, oh, I saw this video on FreeCodeCamp and like they use this term. I know that term, but like, why do we do it this way? Why is it done this way? And why not this way? And then it can explain like in its own words, which kind of is personalized to you and it makes sense to you. And you can ask follow-up questions. And I think also another important part is to verify it. Don't blindly trust what ChatGPT says. It
Yeah.
AI tools don't have wisdom. They will blindly tell you whatever you're asking. Sometimes the question that you ask it might not be the right way to do something, but ChatGPT sycophantically will tell you, "Oh, that's a
Yeah.
great question. Here's the answer." But an experienced developer might tell you, "Hey, that's maybe not the right way to do it. You might want to
Yeah.
think about it this way."
Yeah, GPT will never say, you're asking the wrong question. You
Yes.
should be asking this. But an
Yeah.
experienced engineer would be like, you're going like way down a rabbit hole. Like this doesn't make any sense. Like trying to accomplish this task using this tool.
Yep.
Right. So the sycophantism, which is just a fancy word for it sucks up to you. It basically wants to make you happy. So it'll be like, excellent question. That's so smart and thoughtful.
Yeah,
I can tell
exactly.
you have a nuanced perspective on this. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I don't like that creeping in. I understand that might be good for like retaining users, and pretty soon it's just going to be like the equivalent of like a butler or something like that,
Yeah.
like Alfred, but like doing
Yeah.
everything Batman says.
Yeah.
Like that's what they want to make the user feel like you've got this extremely accomplished person who is in like the British SAS and like has all this knowledge of all the world that has lived in all these different countries, but yet he's just your lowly butler doing
Yeah.
whatever you ask.
Yeah.
Like that's what they want to make everybody feel like. But I think that's a bad direction. I think it should be like call you and on it. Like a lot of times I'll enter like some expression that I've heard when I'm back on like learning Chinese, and it'll be like, oh, you heard this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's not even a real expression. Like I just looked that up and there's like 0 Google results for that expression. You're just trying to make stuff up to make me not feel like an idiot.
Exactly.
And I don't like it. I'm fine with feeling like an
Yeah,
idiot when
yeah.
I'm learning.
And that's a slippery slope, especially in programming, where you're asking it, for a solution, and it gives you this, and you run into a problem. You're like, "Oh, can you fix this for me?" And it keeps going down these path of like repeated mistakes, and then you just end up with like this giant mess that is so hard to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some ways? So you talked about building apps with like an audience of one, kind of like building for yourself using vibe coding, just a quick and dirty, get something together for some back office process that maybe only you care about. And maybe the output isn't like mission critical. It's not like your job hangs in the balance.
Yep.
It's not like you're likely to be ridiculed since nobody's going to look at this code but you. It's just in some private repo or something. Is that kind of like you think the main use case for vibe coding?
Yeah, or if you have a personal project, like I have hobbies. I work with electronics, like maker and builder stuff, where I'm like building microcontrollers that power lights and microphones and sensors and stuff like that. So if you want to build something like that, I think that would be a great use case for using vibe coding.
Yeah. And again, vibe coding, just for anybody that's unfamiliar, is like basically prompting an LLM and letting it write most of the code for you, and then maybe just putting the code where it needs to be in the project file, maybe grabbing a boilerplate and just having it write some of the glue code and stuff like that. So I am very excited to learn more about your day-to-day experience working as a software engineer at Sony, and to dive, I'm sure we'll talk more about AI as the show carries on. First, I just want to thank the 11,342 kind people who support Free Code Camp each month through a monthly donation. These people are making everything possible at freeCodeCamp, our charity. We're a 501c3 tax-exempt charity, and this is how we support ourselves, through donations from chill people. So you can join these chill people and support our charity's mission by going to donate.freecodecamp.org. I also want to thank Wix Studio. Support for this podcast comes from a grant from Wix Studio. Wix Studio provides developers tools to rapidly build websites with everything out of the box, then extend, replace, and break boundaries with code. You can learn more at wixstudio.com. So I want to go back to your childhood. You're from Bengaluru?
That's right. Born and raised.
Yeah, and Bengaluru, for anybody who hasn't heard that term, is the like anti-colonials. Like, we got rid of all the colonial names, and now we've got like native Indian names for the cities. And Bengaluru used to be Bangalore.
Yep, Bangalore.
Yeah, so it is. I would describe it for anybody who hasn't been there, like basically the Silicon Valley of the East. Like it probably has the highest concentration of software engineers of any city, rivaled maybe only by like Beijing. Can you talk a little bit about what your childhood was like there and the changes you've witnessed in your, I don't want to pry too much into your age, but you're like mid-30s maybe?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Like how it's changed over the years and like what it was like when you were a kid there.
Yeah. So it's changed a lot. It is very high tech now. But when I was growing up, I remember like most people didn't have computers. We used to, when I was a kid, like most of our time was spent outside, like playing on the streets, like with toys and bikes or whatever. But I remember when we got our first computer, it was like a 86 computer that I think we got from my mom's bank. And this thing was like a very basic computer. It had like 2 megabytes of memory and 20 megabytes of hard drive and I think 10 megahertz processor. It wasn't much. So that was my first introduction to a computer. And there was no internet and most people didn't have computers. So like I didn't know how to use it, but I would just play with the commands. Like, oh, and there was no Windows or like an operating system. It had DOS, like that was the operating system. So there's no GUI. So it's only command line.
What year was this? Do you remember?
I'd say maybe 2000 or
2000. Okay, so just to put that in perspective, like in the US, the kind of computer you're describing was probably available in like 1990 or maybe even 1988 or something like that.
Yeah,
like
or even 70s. I think it was released in 70s.
Yeah, so DOS has been around for sure. But like I got my first Windows computer and I was one of the first kids on my block to get a computer. I was very lucky. I think in like 93, 94. And it already had Windows 3.1 on it. So that puts things in perspective. So the tech that was reaching Bengaluru at the time was still pretty old. You said your mom got it through the bank. Did she work at a bank?
Yeah, she worked at the bank and I think it was like they were upgrading their computers and they didn't have use for it anymore. So they were giving it out and I think that's how she got it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what were your early days of exploring, the DOS command line, things like that? What were some of the first things you did with the computer?
So I was just running commands in DOS and try to figure out what it does. And I didn't have any book, no internet. There's some friends who had computers and I also had a brother growing up, an elder brother, and he knew a little bit more than me. So I would copy him. He would write these DOS commands and then like I would kind of learn what they do. And you would read the help pages. Like you would just run some command, and if it didn't work, you would read the help pages for that in DOS itself. And I used to
got you kind of. It sounds like you quickly became pretty resourceful because you were have to rely on like the equivalent of like Linux manual pages, to be able to. You had to use the computer to learn how to use the computer.
Exactly, yeah. And we didn't have your phones with Instagram or YouTube. So if you're bored, you couldn't pull out your phone and start scrolling Instagram. So like we had nothing else to do. So we'd spend a lot of time doing this. And I remember like, I think the first program that I wrote was basically a DOS script that would ask you what your name was and then what your age is. And then like, so it would read from the input and then it would print it out back to you. I think that was my first computer program that I wrote.
So a DOS script is kind of similar to like a bash script on Mac or Linux, where you're
right.
You have like a language and you can like take input from the command line and run a program or do things. You have access to like the file system and okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So just a quick correction. I just want to be clear. Like earlier when I said, oh wow, like Bengaluru was way behind the US. It sounds like these were older computers that were thrown out and given away for free. Basically.
Yeah.
So it's not like nobody in India had Windows.
Yeah, exactly. But
okay.
No, it's not that nobody had in Windows, but an average kid did not even have computers. So I was equivalent to average kid. And we were pretty lucky to get computers at that age. Like I don't think any of my friends had them, or even if they did, like they didn't know how to use it.
Yeah. So did this interest, like when it came time to go to university, were you like all about computers? Was this like a major part of what you saw yourself doing in the future?
Yeah. So so my foray into computers, like it progressed more as I grew older. Um, so later in the years, we got a Pentium PC. I think this is when Intel became super popular, and then finally we had Windows. I think it was like Windows 93 or 95 or something.
Yeah, Windows 95.
Yeah, the
By
old.
the way, that's why there's no Windows 9, because Windows 95 was hard coded into so much of the Windows logic that they were worried that they couldn't release Windows 9, so they jumped straight from Windows 8 to Windows 10.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, and yeah, we had Windows, and I remember we didn't even have CD-ROM at that time. We started floppy drives, uh, and I remember like, oh, and our friends used to share uh these pirated games and software. This is gonna stay forever on the internet, isn't it?
Oh,
But
pirated software!
yeah,
You wouldn't steal a car.
yeah,
Why are you making these pirated copies of Doom?
yeah, exactly. So we would share these pirated copies of games and software, and it was hard to install them. Like you had to uh install these crack files and sometimes overwrite some DLLs, like dynamic libraries of the things, because somebody had reverse engineered this game or software to use it. So like that's how we would share games and software, and I got a bit tech savvy by doing these things. Um, and then I remember like I got this software called Microsoft Front Page. It was like a WYSIWYG, like what you see is what you get editor for doing HTML. And I was just messing around with it, and we didn't have internet at the time, and we had cyber cafes in India. These were like shops where you go to browse the internet. So homes typically didn't have internet; it's too expensive, like for you to have home internet.
Yeah.
Only the rich kids would have it. But there were these cyber cafes where you could go like surf, or if you want to print something out, you could do that. So I'd go there, and then I found at that time there's these uh, like this is when internet was getting popular in India, so there were these free like hosting websites. This one was called 20M. They would
20M.
Yeah, 20m.com. I think it was called that because they give you 20 megabytes of hosting for free, so you can get your
Yeah,
own.
it's a web hosting website to this day. I just checked
Oh yeah,
20m.com. Cheap
yeah,
hosting solutions for everyone. Okay, very
yeah,
cool. 20
yeah.
megabytes. That you couldn't do a lot with that. That was like a few JPEGs.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, for me, that was awesome. Like you could get a free domain, subdomain, and free hosting. So what I would do is, for some reason, I was into monster trucks at that time. So I was fascinated by them. So I would collect all these images of monster trucks and then use Microsoft Front Page to author a website. But I wasn't writing code; it was more just drag and drop. Um, and then once I did that, and I didn't have CDs, so we only had floppy drives. So I'd copy my code into a floppy drive and then go to the cyber cafe and then upload it to this website, and where I had my own subdomain. And sometimes like my code wouldn't fit in one floppy drive because I think one floppy disk would held like 1.44 megabytes of data.
Yeah.
But sometimes it wouldn't fit because if I had too many images. So I had to use like some software. I think WinRAR was one where it was an archive
WinRAR.
utility. Yep.
Yeah. Did anybody here pay for a license for WinRAR? Like they
Exactly.
always follow up the, please pay for WinRAR.
Yeah.
WinRAR is free, but please register it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, so I would use WinRAR to chunk my code into multiple archives, so it would fit in multiple floppy drives. And I'd take it to the cyber cafe, like physically carry it and walk over there, and insert it there and use like a FTP tool to upload all my code to the subdomain that I got for free. And I remember sometimes the owner of the cyber cafe, he would get mad at me because he's like, hey, you're using up all the bandwidth with your uploads, and I had to be careful like to not yeah,
So you had to
upload big images.
stealthily upload. You had to sneak those discs in.
Yeah,
Just like check over your shoulder as you like swap out the discs. Make sure
yeah,
he doesn't know what you're up to. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, and like cyber cafes were a huge deal in India back
Yep.
then because internet connection was expensive. Getting a good internet connection was expensive, and like they were a big deal in China when I first went to China too. Like they had these internet cafes called like Wangba. It was just like network bar. is essentially what they were called. And like we go in there and like they'd be super smoky. People would like smoke all the time in there, and you'd have all the foreign kids from Korea that would like be playing StarCraft and stuff in there.
Yeah. That's the other thing you
And
could do there, like play LAN like games.
yeah, and by foreign kids, like I was foreign too. But there were a huge number of Koreans in China at the time, and I will always remember them playing StarCraft and being incredible at it.
Yeah.
So, but that was kind of your early experience getting websites up and expressing yourself through technology, essentially.
Yeah.
Your love of monster trucks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that like going to university, like that is a huge decision. Was it like a shoe-in that you were going to go to university? Like, was your family expecting you to go to university?
Yeah. I think everybody, or most people in India, like if you're at least in the middle class, and when you say university, I'm guessing you're talking about undergraduate level.
Yeah, undergrad.
Yep. Yeah. Most kids from like middle class families go do their undergrad. Um, so it was a pretty normal path for me. But after I joined undergrad, like it just wasn't engaging for me. I think like traditional college, I feel it has a lot of pros and cons. You're just dumping all this knowledge at the same time. It's like kind of like a one size fits all model, and that wasn't working out for me. And I wasn't doing good. It wasn't very engaging. I didn't find it rewarding. So I decided to drop out of college. And I had an uncle who had a small company, who was doing software development. And then he asked me like, "Oh, do you want to come work for me?" And that's when I said, "Okay, I think this is what I'm going to do." So I decided to drop out of traditional college and then start working for my uncle. And I think this is one of the best decisions I took of my life, is to drop out and then actually start working. I learned so much more than what I would have learned if I had stayed in school.
Yeah, what were the first few months of working with your uncle like? Like what kind of stuff were you doing?
Yeah, so my uncle's company was a very small company. They were building web applications for these agencies that required online reservation systems. So it was for like people who operated buses or hotels or like tours, and they wanted an online reservation system where people could log in and buy tickets or hotel rooms. And they had a early working product, and they were using ASP.NET and C Sharp, which is a Microsoft technology. And then when I joined, obviously I didn't have any experience with programming languages at this time. When I joined, my uncle, like, he gave me this book for ASP.NET. He's like, here's the book. On day one, start learning this, and then start working.
Wow. So more of the here's the DOS prompt like manual, like it's in DOS itself, that kind of thing. Like here's the book, learn it.
Yep.
So that kind of hands off instruction.
Yeah, and it was more of a kind of like an apprenticeship job where I was learning as I went, and my uncle was very helpful. Like he taught me a lot. I owe a lot to him to this day, to what I am. And then that's when we also had access to internet in the office. So this is when I would browse websites like FreeCodeCamp and other tutorial websites to learn programming. And it was easy to kind of start working because like if I was able to do small changes. So they're like, oh, like we need to show this on additional field in the UI. So I would just go to the database and like just add a field and just copy all the code in between. Like, oh, just copy this line and change it to this field and propagate that all the way to the UI.
So the classic Stack Overflow use case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was managing to get by and slowly learning. And then at this time, like this is before single page applications. So like in our web app, if you clicked on a button or something, the whole page would empty out. It would be blank, like it would be white, and then it would send the entire request back to the server, and then the server would process your response, and then it would come back, and then it would show up again. So it was not a very good user experience. It was much before like single page applications were popular.
Yeah. So during this time, working for your uncle, learning kind of through doing practical hands-on learning as an apprentice, which is really cool, by the way. Like, I would strongly encourage anybody, if they have the opportunity to do something like what you're doing, I think they'll learn a lot very quickly in the kind of pressure cooker of actually being on a job, having expectations placed on your shoulder, having to be accountable to a boss and get things done, especially if you have to work directly with clients. That's also extremely motivating and elucidating, in my opinion. Yeah. You did finish your degree, though, and you did it in a very interesting way. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always wanted to come to the US to study. So even though I dropped out of school, I felt like it's important for me to have a degree so that I could come here and go to grad school. And that's a kind of common pathway for people from India to come here and study and get a job. So I decided to enroll in distance learning, which is a program where you don't have to go to class. They send you books by mail, and then there are classes in the evening or on weekends, but they're sort of optional as long as you're doing the requisite coursework and doing your assignments and writing the exams and passing them. Uh, that's all they expect of you. But I wasn't doing very good at it. I was doing the bare minimum because I already had a job that took most of my time. But I was learning so much in real world experience in my job that I honestly didn't pay that much attention in school. Maybe that was a bad idea, but I just did the bare minimum and passed my courses, and I was able to get a degree. But at least in software engineering, I learned how to code, how to I learned SQL. I got good at it. I learned C sharp. So I had some I think by the time I got my degree, my undergrad degree, I only had like 5 or 6 years of work experience, which is kind of crazy at that age.
Yeah. I mean, that's a ton of practical experience that you got by kind of concurrently learning. Do you remember how many years, like from the time you started to the time you finished with these remote learning courses?
Yeah, I think I took 5 years to do it.
5 years. Yep. And so where did your degree come from? Did it come from an actual university or okay.
Yeah.
And then you were able to use that university degree to apply to grad school, because at least in the US, you need to have an undergrad before you can go to grad school. I've actually, I think in the UK, I've heard that some people went to grad school without getting an undergrad. That's like really weird to me. Like, I talked to this one guy at the airport in Beijing in like 2007 or something like that. He was like from the UK and he had an MBA, but he'd only attended university for 1 year total. That was it. Wow. Like, he completely skipped college, and then he got into the MBA program by virtue of his like practical work experience. They counted the 10 years or so he worked in industry as like good enough, and they admitted him. So he actually had a graduate degree that was at the same level as me, but he'd only gone to school for 1 year instead of like 6 years, which I thought was unfair at the time. I was just like, damn, what the hell? Yeah. I worked so hard. I spent a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but to get into the U.S. degree programs, you do generally need an undergrad. So you were able to apply. Can you talk about the application process and how you got into the U.S. degree program? We're not going to go, I just want to clarify, freeCodeCamp is an apolitical organization. We're not going to dive into the politics of immigration or anything like that. This is just a practical, your firsthand experience.
Yeah. So I already knew this, this pathway is pretty common, as you know. So I already knew people who had done this. And I made sure to join. The first thing you want to do is make sure your degree is accredited. You don't want a bogus degree from some school that's not valid. So mine was legit. It was from an accredited university. But it was a 3-year degree, whereas traditional colleges in the US require a 4-year undergrad degree. So already there, I had some hiccups where some universities wouldn't accept my degree, but some universities said they would, as long as I took some prerequisite courses when I came here. And the path to application was you had to write GRE, which is the graduate record exam.
Graduate record exam. It's the thing that it's kind of the SAT for grad school is the best way to think of it for anybody who's not familiar. You probably heard of the SAT, the test everybody takes to get into undergrad. With GRE is kind of an optional. It depends on the degree program. If you want to do an MBA, you take the GMAT. If you want to do law school, you take the LSAT. But Carry
Yeah,
on.
yeah. And then you had to write English proficiency test, which
Hmm.
isn't a problem for most Indians because most Indians are very fluent in English.
Yeah.
Those
How
are the
much of
two,
your education was in English as a kid?
all of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of it.
Okay. So you took the GRE. You found a degree program that would accept you. Can you walk us through like that process and like arriving in the U.S.?
Yeah. So, uh, one thing I wanted to mention is my brother was already here, so it was a little easier for me to come here. And then I'd already made some trips to the US before I moved here. Like I was here as a visitor. That's when I got a chance to like uh, look at the lifestyle and see how things work here. And I was very impressed. I love California. That's my home base, so that's my favorite place in the world, I would say. It's California. um,
Yeah. And you've lived in California for like 10 years.
yep, that's
Yeah.
right.
So once you arrive, like you're in the graduate degree program, are you working while you're going to school, or like what's your day to day like?
Yeah. So uh, when I came here, I think one of the first things I wanted to do is get a job. Um, you're not allowed to work any job as a student, as an immigrant student. There's only certain kind of jobs that you're allowed to do.
Like university jobs,
Yeah,
like being working in the computer lab and stuff like that. That's where a lot
exactly.
of the international students. I mean, you
Yeah,
get like incredibly good tutoring from somebody who could probably be making tons of money working in the private sector, but they're
yep,
stuck on a university campus because of work restrictions. So
yeah,
that is a pro tip. If you're at like a university, go and make use of the math lab, make use of the writing lab. You're probably going to have like a dramatically overqualified international student like helping you.
yeah, yeah. And so that's one of the first things I wanted to do. So I was looking for jobs, and I actually found a web developer job, which is totally up my alley. It was for maintaining like the student union websites. Um,
Okay.
and I came early like to the US, and then I applied for that job, and then they interviewed me and I immediately got it. Uh, so right before my classes even started, I had a job, and like it was even relevant to my field, like it was a web developer, so that was super nice.
Can you put into perspective like the difference between how much money you were making working in the U.S. versus working as a web developer back in India? Granted, you were working at like a student,
Yeah,
in a student role at
yeah.
a university, but was it comparable, or were you making more in the U.S.?
I think I was making the same working
Okay,
part-time in the US than I was making working full-time in India. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
S-
I was again like I was uh an apprentice software engineer. Like I mean, I did get promoted over the years, and I got paid way more. Okay, it was a small company, and I was getting paid fairly, and like whatever. Like I wasn't underpaid or anything, but yeah, just the currency conversion makes a big difference.
yeah. So you take your classes. What degree did you ultimately get?
So I got a computer science degree.
So like a master's in computer science.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a good degree to get for sure. And how would you? What were some of the most interesting things you learned during your graduate work in computer science? Do you remember what your like final projects were or anything like that?
Yeah. Uh, my favorite class was databases. Um, so that's what I got really into. But by this time, I already figured out front end is my niche and like my calling. So when I was working in my uncle's company, like we're doing kind of full stack, but later down the line, this is when jQuery became popular. Uh, so then we decided to move a lot of our logic to jQuery and then bring most of the logic to the front end and like kind of took on the front progress or like single page web app uh, paradigm. So that's what I got really good at, and I figured, okay, that's what I really like to do. So in college, I was like, yeah, like that was my goal too. Like, whatever projects I was doing, I was trying to incorporate front end into it. I wrote, I did a computer security project where um, I wrote like a music player, and I was trying to show like how you could prevent somebody from pirating music or videos, the exact thing that I used to do.
So ironic.
I know,
You want to hear something really ironic?
yeah,
You remember I mentioned earlier, I joked about you wouldn't steal a car, those ads, those anti-piracy ads?
yeah.
They never licensed the font that they
Oh
use
my
in those videos.
God,
That
that's
iconic
funny.
kind of like
That's
ransom letter
hilarious.
looking font. Apparently, like I'm not sure if this is 100% conclusive, but developers suspect actually the founder of Python, like the creator of Python, Guido van Rossum, right? His brother is also a dev, and he like was the one who discovered this. I can't remember how he pieced it together, but so ironic. But so okay, it's ironic that you've hired a software engineer. You're like trying to like figure out anti-piracy like countermeasures,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah, yeah. That was one of my projects. And the other one was databases. Like again, like I think a master's degree or a traditional like education, it like I said has pros and cons. For me, it was good. The subjects that I had some knowledge in, or like I had built on, like my understanding of it, those I could just pick up and further my knowledge about it. But there are certain things which I didn't learn well. And those courses, like I think I didn't learn a lot. Like I passed the exams, like I got good grades in it, but those concepts just didn't stick for me. Database is something I'd used when I was working with my uncle, so I'd used them a lot. So I'd written a lot of SQL queries and SQL reports. So when I was studying the internals of databases in my graduate program, I'm like, oh, this is how they work internally. They made a lot of sense. I'm like, okay, now I understand why. But for something like computer architecture or like operating systems where they're talking about all these fundamentals of these systems, I'm like, okay, I don't really know why it's this way, and like it didn't click for me. I was still able to pass the exams, but then yeah, like those things didn't cement in my head.
Yeah. So let's talk about like the process of transitioning from being in grad school to working at one of the biggest, most prestigious tech companies in the world, PlayStation department of Sony. I bet a lot of the people who are listening to this have a PlayStation or at least familiar with it. I mean, it's like the premier kind of game console, I guess, at least in terms of like high performance. And there are a ton of like user experience considerations when you have like this essentially standalone computer that functions as like a game console and has a lot of other functionality like network functionality.
Yep.
I can only imagine the sophistication of like the various code bases you're working with over there. But like transitioning from working in grad school, working as a web dev for the student union, which it basically is like the kind of student, I guess like the meeting place at a university,
Yeah.
where people go and hang out and stuff like that. And like
Yep.
you're kind of like a webmaster or web dev there.
Yep.
And like that's a pretty big jump. Can you talk about that process of, to the extent that you can share like how you applied and how you were able to get over there and work there?
Yeah, absolutely. So right after I was graduated, this is when I was looking for jobs, and by this point, I knew front end is what I love doing. So main focus was learning JavaScript. I'd used it a lot when I was working for my uncle, but I didn't learn it the right way because when when I was working there, like, and when we moved to JavaScript, I was kind of the smartest person in the room when it came to JS. So I didn't learn from anybody else. So I didn't learn good practices. Like I didn't learn the deep ins and outs of using JavaScript. Um, so that's what I set out to do first. Uh, so I read this book. It's a running joke in the JavaScript community. There's a book called JavaScript: The Good Parts. It's only
Yeah.
like like 80 pages or something.
Yeah, there's like this meme of like the JavaScript like technical like specification, like it's the documentation for JavaScript,
Yeah.
and it's like this thick, and then JavaScript, the good parts is like a tiny fraction, like a tenth of the size. So implying that 90% of JavaScript is junk that you don't want to mess with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that book kind of teaches you like uh some of the ins and outs of JavaScript, the quirks, and how to write good code using JavaScript. So that's what I did, and I used to whatever I learned, I used to practice. Like I would write these sample commands. And that's the great thing about JS. You can literally open up a browser, write some code in like the console, and just run it and just test something out. It's so easy to do. You can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
That's what I used to do. Um, just try to understand like how JS works, and then I started applying at different companies. And I remember I applied for this online news media, like they're not like traditional news, it's more like BuzzFeed or something like that.
Yeah.
I interviewed there and I got a job there. And then with PlayStation, I didn't even know about uh like I mean I knew PlayStation, but I didn't know they had jobs. I got very lucky because my roommate at that time, he said he found this job on LinkedIn. He asked me if I want to apply for it. I was like, oh sure. And then that's when I applied. And then actually I got they gave me a take home test. So it was using the Twitch API, um,
Mm-hmm.
and then showing some streams that are currently running from Twitch, and they wanted you to write that in JavaScript,
It's
HTML.
interesting. FreeCodeCamp used to have a project just like that, where you
Oh,
would
really?
like integrate with the Twitch API. I think like something changed the API or something where we couldn't have that project anymore. But you would like have all the different online and offline status, and you'd create like a UI that showed it where you could click through and like expand and show the stream and stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yes. So they gave me a take-home test, and then all my knowledge that I'd learned from reading the book about JavaScript, that gave me some good insights about how to write good JavaScript and why. Like it was important to also say, okay, why am I doing this a certain way? So I did that. I added some comments in the code. Like, okay, this is why I'm choosing to do it this way. And I sent that in, and then I think they liked it. So they called me in for a in-person interview. So I was in Long Beach at that time. So that's where I went to university, and they flew
So
me in.
you went to
Cal
what is the
State,
exact university?
California State
Cal
University, Long
State,
Beach.
Long Beach. Okay.
Yeah,
How far is Long Beach from, where are you based now? Like San Jose or something like that? San Francisco?
San Francisco.
Where's the headquarters? San Francisco. Okay.
Yeah,
So they flew you in, or
yeah,
okay?
yeah. They flew me in for.
Flew you. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it's that far, right? Like you could drive or take
Oh
a
no,
bus.
no. Long Beach
What?
is in Southern California, near Los Angeles.
To SF. I didn't realize it was that far away.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's a 400 miles. Wow.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is
It's
a
far.
long
You
time.
can't.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I stand
Yeah.
corrected. I'm learning
Yep.
in real
Yep.
time. In public.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
My relative ignorance of California, where I spent like 8 years of my life.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
geography. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Long Beach is in SoCal, and then they flew me to San Francisco, gave me a hotel room, and I had to go to an in-person interview. This is where the next day I went in the office. It's in downtown San Francisco, and I had like 4 or 5 hours of interview. It wasn't as intense as some of the other tech interviews where they ask you crazy algorithm questions. But it was more of a well-balanced, where they asked me some coding questions, a lot of behavioral questions, and like cultural stuff where they want to know that, okay, like if I hire you, like would I want to work with you in my team or something like that? They try to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get the offer. What is that like? Like, do you tell your family? Just walk us through that period of time
Yeah.
from getting that offer to actually like starting.
Yeah. So I did get an offer, I think just 2 days later, and then right after the interview, I had a day or two to explore. So I went out San Francisco, I was exploring the city. It was very beautiful. Like I love the geography of the city. It's surrounded by water all around, and there's a lot of unique architectural features. There's cool buildings, parks, and it's very hilly, and there's cable cars
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
really into SF, and then when I flew back, they told me that they had an offer for me, and I was very excited. I only had one other job offer at this point, and I love playing video games, so like this is a no-brainer for me. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna take this job. The next part is negotiating. Like, this is something that people told me that you should do. Like, make it an offer. It's always good to negotiate. Um, you could in some cases get more money than what they initially offered you. I don't think I did, but it
But you
it's
tried.
fine. Yeah, I tried, but
You did try.
yeah,
Okay.
I did try negotiating, but they said this is the kind of standard that they have. And I was like, whatever, it's fine. I'm still happy with what they were paying me. So I was ecstatic. I was very, very happy. And it's, yeah, like super cool to work for a company that I love, like whose products I love. So it was a kind of no-brainer for me.
Yeah. So how did your family react? Did your uncle, like, that you used to work for, like, was he like, yeah, the
Yeah,
wisdom will?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. He was very happy too, and he sometimes tells me that, oh, you should write a book for your journey, like so you can help other people. Like because I was, like I said, I was a college dropout. I was at that time, like if you looked at my career or my education, it would look like I wasn't going down the right path in life. Like I was a rebel when I was young. I was doing bad stuff. Like so, I'm pretty sure my parents were very stressed out about where I would end up. So to see the transformation from like there to like going to the US, doing grad school, and then actually getting a job, I think it must have been a huge relief for them.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the work that you do at Sony to the extent that you can talk about it. Again,
Yeah.
like I know you're at a big company and a lot of times they don't want you talking about all the different intricacies.
Yep.
But what is your typical day-to-day work like at Sony? So do you report to the office like 5 days a week, or like what is the day-to-day life? And of course it's like it's a giant Japanese corporation. I've actually worked for a giant Japanese corporation, so
Oh,
I have
no
a
way.
little bit of insight into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was it like? Or what is it like?
Yeah. It so again, yeah, my day to day it's changed over the years, but currently I don't go into the office. Um, they don't require us to go in. It's all voluntary. They don't even require you to come 1 day a week. Uh, it depends again, like it depends on which team you're in. If you're in a team that needs to work with something that can only be done in the office, then yeah, you need to go in. But I personally don't have to go in at all. But I do go in at least twice a week because I don't like to be cooped up in my room, just sitting in front of my computer. I like going to the office, having a change of environment, meeting people, like having those water cooler moments. And I have a really cool office in SF. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And like, if you can tell us a little bit about like your progression, because you've gone through the many levels. You're at L5, which is just below L6, which you said is the highest engineering level at Sony. And like that's across 10 years of hard work. But like, how has it changed as you've progressed and like your responsibilities and like the colleagues you work with and all that? How has that changed over the past 10 years?
Mm, yeah. So when I joined, so yeah, like a little bit about what I do at PlayStation. I'm a front-end engineer, and I work on the system software for PlayStation consoles. I don't work on games. I work on the platform, which is the PlayStation console itself. And I work on the system UI. So when you turn on your console, the menus that you interact with, the store, things like that. So there's again like, but PlayStation a big company, and the system software is big too. So we divided into teams. Like I worked on for PlayStation 4, I worked on the game page, which is like you scroll to a game and then there's some information about a game where you can buy add-ons or watch videos. Um, that's what I
So
worked
to
on.
an extent, it's kind of like almost like it's pretty important. You probably A/B tested a lot because there's actual money involved. Like people can preview or try a demo or something like that, or they're trying to make a purchasing decision.
Yeah, yeah. There's those features now where you can demo something or stream. Like it's pretty cool. You can actually stream a game. Uh, so you don't have to wait to download. You're like, oh, I want to try
Oh
this
wow,
game. So you just press a button and it just streams immediately, and you get to play a trial. It could be a time trial or like a level trial, and then you can check it out. And then if you like it, you can buy it. I think
that's
that's a
cool.
pretty cool feature. Yeah.
Yeah. So like what if you recall like how many years it took you to go up the different levels and stuff like that, I think a lot of people might be interested in that because you are different from a lot of people whom
Mm.
I've met in San Francisco in that you don't jump around from job to job. And like
Mm.
personally, like I'm kind of like like I idealize like the company man lifestyle of just being able to work at one company for a while. And there's a saying in English, like a rolling stone gathers no moss. If you're just constantly moving from company to company, first of all, you get a reputation of like, do I really want to hire this guy? Like he constantly changes jobs.
Nope.
But also, like you lose out on a lot of the tacit insight and institutional knowledge that you get from watching like a product life cycle. Like PlayStation 4 has this long arc, and then there's this kind of other place, and you miss out on a lot of that in the evolution of these different code bases and these different products and stuff like that if you're constantly jumping around. So I want to contrast with a lot of the people whom I've had on this podcast who do jump around, certainly don't work at the same place for 10 years. I mean, that's like almost unheard of in Silicon Valley. Yeah. So maybe you can give us some insight into like what the chronology of your time there.
Yeah. I joined in 2015. I was hired as software engineer 2. I think that's level 2 or level 3. I think it's weird because software engineer 2 is level 3. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they're using like the zero denomination. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're going by index. But I joined as software engineer 2. And again, like my experience working during my undergrad, like that's what got me to. Otherwise, I'd have to probably start lower. And then I think I worked for 2 years or 3 years, and that's when I got promoted to senior. And I think I was already like at a software engineer 2 level. I was already like more than 50% closer to senior, because I had 6 years of work experience at this point working in India in a small company. So that jump was pretty easy. You just have to show that you can own stuff, like you can own like a small feature or some small code base on an application end to end. You're like, oh, I'm gonna like be the owner. If there's any problem with this, people can just come to me, and they know that I'd be able to fix it. So when you show that kind of ownership, that's when you get promoted from like a senior, or sorry, a software engineer 2 to a senior.
Yeah.
And after that, like I think it took me. I started working on PlayStation 5. This is obviously before its launch. I was prototyping stuff, and I think my niche is like building really amazing user experiences, and I'm able to like kind of like figure out the micro interactions of a user interface to make it very engaging, like figuring out like pixel by pixel and adjusting all the animations, and working on performance. So those are kind of some of my niche stuff that I did, and I think that got recognized. That's when I got promoted to staff software engineer, like about 4 years later, I think.
Yeah.
After a senior. And that's where I am now. And the next jump from staff to principal engineer, that's the hardest jump for in the career ladder. I remember like I was looking at some metric in the company where they're showing like how many engineers there were, or like how many employees there are and how many principals there are. It's like tiny. It's extremely small. So it's a hardest jump to go from staff to principal. And then I want. I just want to touch on the fact that I'm here for so long. I think it's a very interesting thing. It's also a very Japanese thing. Also, in Japanese culture, you typically tend to stick to a company. So I'm actually a baby in this company compared to some of the Japanese people that I work with. I remember I had a colleague like who moved from a different Sony organization to PlayStation, and I asked him one day just casually like, "Hey, like how long have you been working here?" And he just nonchalantly said, "Oh, 25 years." I'm like, "Whoa, this is crazy."
Yeah. I mean, it's like a career. That's like
it's
You work for the government, you work for the military, so like 20 years is like an entire career basically. And the idea is that you go and retire and stuff like that. But 25 years, that's a long time to be working at one place.
And I love this company. That's why I'm here. I could easily move around, probably get more money as well if I do that. But I don't think it's always all about the money. It's about the culture. I love the people that I work with. I love my company culture. And I like that we're not like I don't want to call out other companies, but like I feel some of the other big tech, I wouldn't feel great if I was working on something that was getting people addicted to like social media. Like, so I don't want to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I I feel like PlayStation is a little better that way. And it's obviously it's great to work on like something that you love using, like a game console. And
Yeah.
like you
I mean,
said,
you can
there's
just, after work, you can just turn it on and like kind of
yeah,
like enjoy your work as
yeah,
you're relaxing. Yeah.
yeah. And as you said, like the game consoles, like they're a big evolution. So PS4 was launched, I think in 2013 or 2014, and then PS5 is 2020. It only happens like every 6 or 7 years. So I got to work on my first console launch in 2020, which is the PS5. That was a very rewarding experience, and I want to be there for the next one.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the day to day work in terms of like how you get work done. So, do you have people that answer to you, or are you like a individual contributor for the most part? Like, how is it done? Uh, are you spending most of your days code reviewing other people's work? As you get more senior, do you spend more time in code review and less time in individual feature development? What has it been like for you?
Yeah, when you're a senior software engineer or SE2, typically you're expected to most of your work is coding, and then reviewing other people's code. As you progress and become senior and staff, at the staff level, I'm generally like working on system design and architecture. So when we're working on something, like I'm responsible for setting the domain direction for it, and then figuring out like, is this the best tool? Is this the best way we're solving this problem? And answering those questions. And sometimes that can be incredibly difficult. So you like then you bring people together. You're like, okay, I probably need the opinion of these people, so you want to bring them together. Um, and then yeah, like sometimes I do a lot of coding as well. But a lot of it is yeah, system design and architecture.
How many hours a day would you say you spend in meetings?
That's a good question. Like, luckily, it's not a lot right now. Maybe 2 to 3 hours a day. But sometimes even lesser than that. But I've
Yeah.
been in positions where it's a lot more than that, and it's oh my God, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, would you, like, a lot of people have this fantasy that they're going to show up at a developer role and they're just going to be able to sit there and code all day with their headphones on and not
No,
talk to anybody. That's not accurate.
no.
Do
It
those
is.
sorts of roles exist at all
I don't think
anymore?
so. You're constantly gonna be distracted by things happening. So like my work, like what happens is, oh, I'll go log in. I need to check my emails. There's a bunch of, and at my level, I'm expected to contribute to many projects. Like my impact uh should spans across like almost the entire organization. So
Yeah.
I'm involved in many projects. So I get pull requests that have been submitted to different projects. So I need to review them. And then there might be comments on my own pull requests, which I need to review. And then I might get Slack messages from uh, different teams, different people, and different channels. And then you have your, task for the day. So you need to like kind of balance out all these things. And it's a skill that you learn to like, it's very hard to stay focused on your task, especially when there's so many distractions. Um, so it's a skill that you need to learn to like, like how do you keep your heads down and focus without having to context switch. Like we call it context switching, and it's a very
Yeah.
expensive thing to context switch because if you're working on something and then you read a message on Slack that somebody else sent you, going back to what you're originally doing is gonna take more time and a lot of
Yeah.
energy for your brain to switch. So you want to avoid context switching. But at my level,
Yeah.
there's a lot of context switching I have to do.
So, like, context switching, like, there's this great webcomic. I'll see if I can find it and link it. But basically, it shows somebody like thinking really hard about a problem, and like in their head, all these things are coming together, and like they're trying to do some sort of architecture problem. And then all of a sudden, somebody says, "Oh, hey, I sent you. Did you see that email I just sent you?" And
Yeah.
then like, all that stuff crumbles, and
Yep.
then they're like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And then they have to basically start over. That I think it does a great job of illustrating context switching and its cost.
Yep.
And that's okay. I found it. Yeah, this is great. I'm definitely going to include a link to this in the show notes. So be sure to, I mean, it'll very clearly elucidate the cost associated with that. So just a little bit of personal interjection here. I check my email like 3 times a week. I check like Google Meet, which is our Slack, essentially,
Okay.
like 3 times a week. And like the reason I do that is because I want to be focused on the deep work with the rest of the time, and then I want to be able to do like the manager minded stuff, or like, okay, this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this is where this project is, and all this stuff. Like I consider that a great luxury, by the way. I don't think most people have the luxury of only checking their email like 3 times a week and hitting inbox 0 and then moving on. But basically that's kind of how I roll, because I've identified that context switching is extremely costly, and that it just takes forever. Like I can spend all day jumping back and forth between my email and trying to actually get work done, or I can block those out on my calendar and say, okay, this is email time. I'm just going to do this and stuff like that. You don't necessarily have the luxury of doing that when you're on a giant team or lots of teams, and everybody's trying to get a piece of Dilip to get his insight on like this aspect of like front end architecture, stuff like that. Right. But I do want to emphasize, like, you're preaching to the choir. Like I'm 100% on board with just minimizing the switching between different tasks.
Yeah. And I don't think it's that it's it's true that you're expected to do this in an organization. Like at some level, yes, you are, but a lot of it is personal discipline. Like for me, and I know a lot of people have this problem. They like, when they see a notification, it's very hard for them to ignore it. They're like, oh, when I see that red bubble, I need to click it. Like our minds are wired that way. And these tech companies know that. Like that's why they design things a certain way. And that's the problem with your phone too. That's when you see a notification, you're like, oh, I have to click that red dot because my brain is drawn to it. So it's also like building that discipline and like building techniques for you to like know how to like reduce this context switching.
Well, let's dive into some of those techniques, because you are clearly somebody who gets a lot of stuff done. You manage your time, and you have been rising within this organization while still enjoying the beautiful city that is San Francisco. What are some ways that you kind of get out of the office at a reasonable hour by virtue of efficiently working?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, like I set time for my, like when I have heads down work, I like try to like block out my calendar so people can't set up meetings or anything during that time, and then reduce distractions. Like you can use there are different modes. There are all these apps and software provide. Your phone has a do not disturb mode, which when you set on, like on at least on an iPhone, like it won't even show you any notifications. If people really need to call you, they can, like it tells like the caller, like, oh, they have the notification silent. Are you sure you wanna like you still want to call them or something? And then it only rings the phone if they say, they select it. So you set all these modes in your software, so you're kind of free of distractions. And then a lot of it is discipline. Like I said, it's just training your brain to not look at that thing, and saying that, oh, these things can wait for later. I feel like we're trying to, like our brains are trying to get this cheap dopamine, um, that we feel like when you open a new email, oh, this might be something interesting. So like, I want to go look at this email right now. It's like opening a treasure chest. You're like, oh, I might find something interesting here. That's training your brain to like not like cheap dopamine, um, and be disciplined about it. So you, like for me personally, I try to reserve time for that. I'm like, okay, this is my time where I'm gonna go scroll on my phone or look at emails or something. But it's good to set time for like heads down work and not be interrupted by anything, and like training yourself mentally to not be distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have any other tips other than like using do not disturb mode, things like that? Like when you sit down, okay, let's pretend you're sitting down, which you might do later this week. Sitting down, you've got like a very clear issue you're working on, or a feature that you're building out or something like that. Like take us through the process you go through to like sit down and actually, write some code. What is a typical session like for you?
Yeah, it's a lot of thinking. That's most of my job is, I think, thinking. Yeah. So like, yeah, when I'm sitting down, like I'm writing some code, I'm testing out ideas, I'm browsing the internet to get resources, and nowadays it's also leveraging AI to validate my ideas. I'm like, am I doing this the right way? Am I right solving the right problem? Asking those kind of questions. And
Yeah.
then it's also like, yeah, starting small. It's writing small pieces of code and building on top of that and focusing on just different parts of what you want to build, but start small and then just iron that part down and then yeah, focus on that and validate it and test it out. And if it works, and then you build on top.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So just kind of gradually like thinking a whole lot, as you said, and then just writing small components and gradually building, like creating your Lego blocks and then assembling them into your,
exactly. Yeah,
Death Star or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Okay. So let's say one of the things you are very like, inspiring, one of the dimensions that you're inspiring in my mind is the fact that you're pretty advanced in your career. You're doing, front end engineering. You're working with, JavaScript and other tools like that, and that yet you're continuing to expand your skills in ways that like a lot of people may not. They may be like, oh, I'm just going to continue to become more specialized in this aspect of web development, for example. But you have been actively learning C++, which is not an easy language to pick up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about what inspired you to like go deep into C++ and why C++, and then maybe how you're going about learning it?
Yep. Yeah. So, um, this started like a few years back when we were working on projects that were using C++. And I felt like I was a bit stagnating, like because JavaScript, I feel like there's not a lot in JavaScript that you can do. I mean, actually, modern JavaScript, that's not true. Like modern JavaScript is pretty awesome. There's a lot of new features, but I felt I wanted to do something more than just write JavaScript. So, and then like I thought people don't write C++ nowadays and like use more higher level languages, but what I found is that's not the case. When you want high performance code, use C++. So a lot of times, a front end, like when you're building a web app and you're shipping to people that are running it on browsers, it's you probably don't need to worry about like that level of performance. But when you're working on a game console like PlayStation, that's not the case. Like, and a lot of people don't know this, but PlayStation is, for example, PS5 is very powerful. It has a very powerful CPU and a very powerful GPU. But most of that power is saved for games because we want games to like leverage as much CPU and GPU as much as possible to like create amazing, beautiful games. So the actual amount of resources that we get for the UI is very less. We work in a very constrained environment. So we need to be able to squeeze out as much as possible from very little and at the same time create this beautiful user experience. And that's why we use C++ because it's highly performant. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Has
so
anybody like been like, oh, you should use Go, you should use Rust, you should use some
yeah,
other high performance
yeah,
language?
yep, yep. Those topics always come up, and it's always using the right tool for the job. And one of like the considerations when you're choosing the right tool is if you can find people to hire on it, and like how easy it is for somebody to jump in and start working on it. So C++
Yeah.
is probably relatively easier to hire for and to train people to work on than some more niche languages like Go or Rust. But we do, yeah, like those questions do come up, and they're very valid questions that we need to ask.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So just the practical aspect of it's like everybody learns C++ in undergraduate, probably if they're doing a traditional CS program. Like a lot of my friends who went through a CS degree, I didn't, but they would like go to the hackathon and they're like, oh, let's just build this in C++ because I'm familiar with it. And you've got this existing C++ legacy code base. It's pretty difficult to wrap your head around. So it's just easier to bring people in and onboard them. And I guess you probably don't have to rewrite a lot of existing code in a new language that people are less familiar with as well.
yeah,
So
yeah, that's right.
yeah,
And again, like it's not just existing projects; it's new projects too. Even when you start new projects, like people are picking C++. Like one of the projects that I know is React Native. Like that's something we use to like we build on top of React Native. So React Native, a lot of uh, React Native was recently changed, not recently, maybe a few years now, but it was changed to be in C++ to be more portable. That's one of the advantages of C++ is that you can port to more devices easily. Um, I'm sure you can do it with Rust and Go too, but again, like C++ is probably like more people have experience with it. But like I said, I thought C++ was going away, but that's not the case. I see like these big projects like React Native using it and use it in our projects. I was like, oh, maybe this is a programming language that I should learn because there seems to be relevance still. And it's a very powerful language, and I'm pretty sure like learning it will like be useful for my career.
Yeah.
So that's when I started learning. I I got a book like to learn C++, and they're at C++ 20. Like that's I think there's 23 too, but I think 20 is kind of like the latest stable version. And I started learning C++ 20. And it's like C++ 20 is modern, but it's way more complicated than JavaScript. So that's why I want to get into it and learn the right way.
Yeah.
And one of the things with C++ is concurrency. Like in JavaScript, you don't need to worry about concurrency where you have multiple threads executing your code. But with C++, you can write concurrent code, which is very performant and useful, but it is incredibly hard to learn and get right. So that's something that I started focusing on, learning concurrent code and C++,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the PlayStation operating system is primarily C++.
Yes, it has multiple levels. The lower level, like the kernel and stuff, are probably C, but on top of that is C++.
Yeah. And then the games themselves are they mostly written in C++? Like I
Yes.
know there are lots of frameworks like Unity, Unreal, things like that, and those are C++
Yep.
focused frameworks, right?
Yeah. I think you can use different languages, but if you want the most performance, they use C++.
So a lot of people are hearing like freaking out about memory safety and things like that right now with C++ and C++ is doomed because of security issues and things like that. I mean, have any of those types of discussions happened that you know of within the organization that you can share? Because like I think a lot of people are maybe prematurely bailing on C++ is my read of the
Oh.
situation.
No, I haven't heard anything. And again, like I'm not an expert C++ programmer. Maybe somebody like some other people are talking about it. Like, but I haven't heard anything like that.
Yeah.
And like I said, there are open source projects like big ones like React Native that are written in C++. They're big. Like a lot of companies use React Native.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to dive a little bit more into just general advice you would have for people, especially people growing up in India today who are maybe like high schoolers who would like to do what you've done, who would like to potentially use these correspondence courses and find like work instead of necessarily taking the traditional route of just waiting around university. And like, I'm not an anti-university person.
Yeah.
Don't get.
Yeah.
I'm not like some anti-intellectual university's like, like it's a big waste of money and time. Like I definitely see the value in even learning like things that aren't necessarily used for work, like just for the sake of learning them. Like
Yeah.
I'm a big supporter of traditional like liberal arts education in terms of like learning math, learning like all the general ed sciences, stuff like that. I'm not like, let's strip all that away and just have like technical colleges. I want to emphasize that in case somebody gets that vibe. But let's say hypothetically, you don't want to go to university. You want to spend the equivalent of $100 a semester, or it's probably a little bit more than that, just taking essentially correspondence courses like you did and learning the knowledge, but like maybe ditching the actual college experience and just going your own road and like immediately getting into the industry and working.
Yep.
Right. While getting that degree, the formal degree, I always encourage people to get a degree. Like what you did, I think is very inspiring and impressive in the way that you then kind of like formalized your degree by just going to and getting a grad degree afterward, which a lot of people want to do anyway. Like and I'll tell you, once you get a grad degree, nobody cares about your undergrad degree. They just look at that grad degree. They're like, okay, what did you? Oh, you got a CS master's. I don't care that you don't have a CS undergrad. I think maybe some people might split hairs and be like, oh, didn't build out this foundational, they didn't take an operating systems class or something like that, right? But like I think in practice, most people are going to look at somebody who has a grad degree in computer science and they're going to say, that person probably knows more about computer science than the person who has an undergrad, even if that person's undergrad is in something like more general, like management information systems or something like that, right? So
Yep.
can you give us maybe some tips for people who want to follow in your footsteps? Things that maybe
Yeah.
you did that you found out like, that was actually suboptimal and I should have done this. Like if somebody wants to reproduce your success
Yeah.
in 2025, how should they get started?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think this is the same advice I would give myself if I could go back in time. I think one is you don't need a traditional degree to become a software engineer. I learned way more on the job or on resources on the internet, like FreeCodeCamp and other websites, than I did in my college education. That being said, I don't think college education is necessarily bad. The advantage with college education is you get to go deep in some subjects, which may or may not be good, but there is the discipline aspect of it, and then there's a socialization aspect of it. So you go to college, you socialize with like-minded people who are your age or similar age groups and have similar interests. And then the discipline you have, like you're paying so much money, so like you're probably encouraged to wake up and then go to class and study. Um, but if you could do those things on your own, like if you take a course and then if you could be disciplined to, you know, uh, do like the course properly without getting distracted, and then socialize by going to like maybe on the internet, uh, meeting like-minded people there, go to community events. You could almost learn more than you can learn in college for software engineering. And then like the biggest advice I would give myself, or if I could go back, is learning. Like learning is so important. Even me, like for me, like after being a software engineer for so long, I haven't stopped learning. I love to learn. And over the years, I've gotten these, or like gained these insights into learning. Yeah, and I can share them like three big insights to learning that
Okay,
I've,
let's hear them.
yeah, like that I've kind of figured out over the past few years, like learning C++, and also been learning Japanese. That's the other thing I've been learning.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
yeah, one is continuous learning and small improvements. Like you want to learn like small things every day, make small improvements every day. And there's a Japanese word for it too. It's called kaizen, which means continuous improvement. As long as you learn something today that you didn't know yesterday, you're already on the right track. You're And this over time compounds. So all you have to do is have some discipline to learn something new, just a little bit. And the cool part is like the hardest problem we face towards like actually going to like sit down to learn is the resistance to do it. Once you actually sit down and start doing it, it's a lot easier. Like it's just the resistance to go start doing it. Um, so that continuous learning, just learning a little bit every day is fantastic. Like it adds up over time. And the second one is a flow state. This is a term in psychology that they use. This is a state of mind where you're not distracted and you're very engaged. And the way to be in that state is when you're working on a problem or you're learning something, you could be in uh, one end of the spectrum where what you're doing is very repetitive and not engaging, that you get bored. So it leads to boredom. Maybe you're like doing data entry or like writing hello world when you already know that. That's very boring. You get distracted easily and it's not fun. And on the other hand is something that is extremely challenging. You're like, oh, I want to figure out how AI works. You're like, oh, that's so difficult. Like you have this giant problem that you have no idea what's happening. You're getting all these errors when you're coding, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and it's very frustrating. And that leads to anxiety. But flow state is when you're in the middle, where what you're working on is not boring, but challenging enough. It should have some challenge that you're learning, and having that challenge keeps you motivated. And if you're in that state, like you're not distracted, you're engaged, you forget everything else around you. So whenever you're working on a problem, figure out like, oh, this is so big, it's just not working. Just break it down to smaller and smaller chunks, and figure out like what's that optimal chunk where I know a little bit about this, but I don't know something, and I can easily learn that, and I can keep being engaged. And then you just multiply that over time, and then you can learn a big topic by just repeating it for all these smaller chunks. And then the last principle that I've learned is learning like till you die. Like do it every
Learn
day.
so you die.
Exactly. Yeah, you
Love
live
it.
to learn. You live to learn. Like yeah, and you do it every day. And it's another other thing I want to highlight is to be kind to yourself. I feel like the biggest critic of ourselves is us. We always tend to compare, like our inner monkey brain is always trying to compare us to others. There's this imposter syndrome. You're like, oh, look at them. They're doing so good while I'm not. Or like you're like, oh, I didn't study or learn for a 1 month. It's okay. If that happens, just restart, go back, start on day one again. It's totally okay. Life happens. We can't, like all be so disciplined.
Yeah.
So you keep doing that over and over again, like over the years, you can be good at anything.
100%. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
have said it better. So just to recap Dilip's tips here. Learn until you die. I love that. That's going to be the thumbnail. I think. Bo's going to A/B test like some of the different things you said. I've been taking notes throughout this call, but like I love that statement. Learn until you die. Learn or die. Like skate or die. Continuous learning and small improvements. Kaizen. Okay. The continuous improvement word for. I actually know the characters. I can't verbally express those characters.
The kanji, yeah.
Very important concept. I think pioneered, like Toyota was like a big advocate of like a lot of the quality improvements. I mean, Toyota like totally revolutionized a lot of stuff. You can read like their books about it, and I'm sure Sony's been playing a big part in that as well.
Yep.
Kind of like the Japanese approach to getting things done and efficiency and productivity and all that stuff. But small improvements compound. As long as you're learning just a little bit that you didn't know yesterday, it'll gradually compound. And as we know with compounding, if you start compounding even like 1% a day, by the end of the year, you're like many hundreds of percent better than you were before. Flow state. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, I completely butchered that dude's name, but he did all his research, applied psychology stuff about how people get like in the zone and they start getting things done and the world just melts around them. And like, if you've ever seen the movie, it was kind of a cheesy movie, but it was called like Limitless with like Bradley Cooper. And he like takes these pills and it basically just puts him into a continuous flow state where he's constantly really focused on what he's doing. So everything is like practical, like easy to do. And that is the power of the flow state. Like if you can actually harness that for yourself through meditation or through exercise or through just, getting a lot of sleep and taking cold showers, whatever, to each their own. But basically if you can harness that, that's like a superpower in itself, just being focused. And then, so those are the three things, continuous learning, compounding, flow state, and learn until you die, lifelong learning. So that is great advice to end on. I think this is just such profoundly useful advice. Dilip, I'm going to encourage everybody to, take your teaching seriously and consider applying these to their life. Since I mentioned Skate or Die, and since you were talking about learning Japanese, I will share a TV show that's on YouTube that I've been using to improve my Japanese a little bit. If anybody is interested in skateboarding, it's called Kaso.
Nice.
Have you heard of this?
No.
It's like basically they get all these skaters and they put them on these crazy like it's like a kind of a reality TV show, but it's like with really good skaters.
Okay. It's a Japanese TV show?
Yeah, Japanese skateboarding TV show.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's up on YouTube and it's like super entertaining and super wholesome too. Like everybody's got positive energy. They just want to get better at skating. It's great.
That's cool.
So I'll link to that as well if anybody wants to check it out.
Okay.
And Dilip, I really appreciate you carving time out of your very busy day to share your insights with us. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and like thank you for creating like all these tools to help people, and like thanks to all the teachers and people who contributed and donated their time to Free Code Camp, so people like me could use it to learn, self-teach, and then like be where I am. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, everybody tuning in, until next week, happy coding.
Bye.